is one of the most critical parts of redistricting. And we will answer any questions that you may have at the end. So again, welcome. We're really excited to have you here. So first, we are going to go over our redistricting advisory committee. Basically, these are the people who are in charge of redistricting. It is a 15-member committee that is appointed by the board, and each of the districts is represented. The board assists in conducting community outreach and identifying communities of interest countywide. Introducing you here to our redistricting team with the Solano County staff. And we have a couple more people here. And this is our consultant team, which I am a part of with Redistricting Partners. So we are going to go over the agenda, the things that we are going to be covering tonight. First, we are going to start with redistricting basics. Then we are going to go over what the Redistricting Advisory Committee does. We are going to talk about traditional redistricting principles. Then we are going to go in depth on communities of interest, what they are, why they're important. We're going to do a demonstration of the mapping tool that Solano County has called Districtor. We're going to talk about how to give public testimony on communities of interest. And then we're going to go over our public hearing schedule. So first, what is, yeah?
Okay. Sorry, this is Michelle. So I think on the welcome screen, you forgot to introduce Supervisor Mashburn, who's on this call this evening. He wanted to say a few welcoming words.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so sorry, Mr. Mashburn. Let me get right back to that.
That's all right, Kay. You don't need to take it back a slide. And I apologize ahead of time as I won't be able to stay the entire meeting. Unfortunately, I found out I have to go assist my mother and aunt evacuate from Plumas County because of the fires up there. So my attendance will be short-lived to go take care of that. Anyway, I would just like to say thank you to the members of the public that are online with us today to learn about redistricting and about its importance and how we're going to go about it in this county. I want to thank the team members from the county, all our county staff that are online today to be part of this meeting and part of educating our public and helping to reach out to our communities so that they have a say and they have a voice in how and where and what we do with regard to our democracy and how we are going to move forward in the county with redistricting. And so thank you all for being here today. Thank you for your efforts on our part. Kay, thank you to you and your group for facilitating this and for carrying the load with all the maps and the webpage and everything else that you guys are doing. And I look forward to the outcome and to see what everybody brings forward. Thank you, Rosie. I think I saw that you were on here too. Rosie is one of my appointees from the 5th District who is a rural resident and has a really great understanding of those special interests that involve our rural areas. So anyway, thank you all for being here and please go forth and do good work. Make this county a better place. It's already a great place. Make it a better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mitch. All right, let's get back to where we were. Okay, so what is redistricting? Redistricting is the process of adjusting district lines every 10 years after the release of US Census data. So having balanced district ensures that every community is represented fairly. When people usually think of redistricting, they usually go to the state level and congressional redistricting, but local governments also go through this process, just like Solano County is doing now. Redistricting on the county level affects your community, and it's important that community members are involved in this process so that they can have input and how their neighborhoods are drawn. Redistricting ensures that districts are balanced in regards to population, but it also serves to empower communities and preserve voting rights. So now that we've defined redistricting, we'll go over the structure and process. So the board has appointed a 15-member redistricting advisory committee, also known as a RAC, to assist them in conducting community outreach. So the RAC has 3 main goals, and those goals are conducting community outreach hearings, identifying communities of interest from public input, and reporting to the board the public input that the committee has received. So we'll talk a little bit about where we've been, where we are now, and where we're going. So in May of this year, the Redistricting Advisory Committee had its first meeting. The series of 10 outreach meetings started in June. Tonight is our 5th outreach meeting, and we have 5 more throughout the month of August. September 23rd is when the RAC submits community of interest reports to the Board of Supervisors. That's around the time when 2020 census data is coming out. And December 15th is the deadline for the Board of Supervisors to pass final district plans. So there's a number of criteria that has been used nationally and upheld by courts. The first is that each district has to be of relatively equal size, and that's people, not citizens or voters. It has to be contiguous, so districts should not jump or hop. Another way to say this is that you can draw your district with one line. They maintain communities of interest, which we will get in depth on in the next slide. They follow city, county, and local government lines. And finally, they keep districts compact in both appearance and function. So let's talk about communities of interest. So communities of interest are a neighborhood, a community, or a group of people who have common policy concerns and would benefit from being in one single district. A community of interest is defined by you, the local community members. Another way of understanding a community of interest is that it's a way for a community to tell its own story about what neighbors share in common and what makes it unique when compared to the surrounding communities. So keeping communities of interest together is an important principle in redistricting. It's especially helpful for communities that have been traditionally left out of the political process, and community members can define their communities by telling their own stories and describing their concerns to policymakers. So communities of interest are the building blocks of districts. They can include ethnic and language minorities, as well as many other groups. A community of interest is subjective, and it's open-ended to be as inclusive as possible. And because communities of interest are defined by you, the community members, you don't need census data to submit a community of interest testimony. So some communities that are covered by the Voting Rights Act, which is a federal law that seeks to remedy racial disenfranchisement, it protects these communities listed here: Latinos, Asians, and African Americans. And so while communities of interest may include race, it cannot be the predominant factor in drawing district boundaries. So here are a few examples of community of interest. We have a lot of examples listed here, but it's just a few examples of what a community of interest can be. So some examples are an area of downtown that shares public services, a school district, a media market, a community with a shared language or shared geographic features. And again, this is just, this is an unfinished list. A community of interest can be a lot of different things. So while we're talking about what a community of interest is, let's talk about what a community of interest is not. So the Fair Maps Act explicitly prohibits the following groups from being considered a community of interest. The first is political party affiliation. The next, incumbents and political candidates. These are not considered community of interest, and the Fair Maps Act explicitly prohibits them. The following bullets are not prohibited by the Fair Maps Act, but they are really difficult and almost impossible to draw. These groups are groups of similar-minded people who do not share a similar geographic location. It cannot be mapped, so it cannot be a community of interest. And a community of interest that are countywide, it is just too broad. So communities of interest, have to be able to be mapped and share, a certain bond. So with that, there are 3 critical questions when you are defining your community to ask yourself. First is, does the community have a shared culture, shared characteristics, or bond? Personal stories are really powerful. So you want to think about what makes my community unique, and imagine describing your community to somebody who would like to move to your community. So does your neighborhood share certain celebrations or traditions? Are there important places where your community likes to gather? What's the history of how your community came together? Really thinking about what bond does my community have, what makes it unique. Next we have, is the community geographic in nature? Is it able to be mapped? You want to be able to think about what are boundaries? Using boundaries when describing your community of interest can be really helpful. For example, geographical landmarks, streets, freeways. It makes it easier to build the maps when considering your community of interest in the future. Next up, we have describing the community's relationship with the jurisdiction and how it's affected by policy decisions made by elected officials. Policy issues are a big reason most people are invested in redistricting. So highlighting community issues in personal stories and written narratives helps demonstrate the importance of having elected officials who understand and respond to your community's needs. So some questions you can ask yourself is, has your community come together to advocate for important services, or have you worked for more recognition or support for your community? So now that we talked about what a community of interest is, I'd like to give you a personal example. I am from the East Coast. I'm from Manchester, New Hampshire. And when I was in high school, there was this really busy one-way, 2-lane street that spanned about 10 city blocks. And people sped down this street, and there were a lot of accidents because of it. The street had schools and churches on it. It was a very traveled commuter route for people who worked downtown, and community members that lived on the street and commuted on the street went to the city for a solution. Their efforts got rid of one of the 2 lanes. It created a bike lane in its place, and doing that slowed down the average speed, which in turn cut down on accidents and made the city more bike friendly. So this example has all 3 of these characteristics. It has, the shared characteristics or bond. That's people that go to school together, or people that commute together, or they all live in the same neighborhood on the same street. It's easily mapped in that 10 city block. And it also has clear policy needs that was affected by local jurisdiction. So now that we have had an example of a community of interest, and we've talked a lot about what a community of interest is and is not, I'd like to do a little exercise with you. If you would like to either give a thumbs up, if you want to unmute yourself to answer these questions, that would be really wonderful. So the first question here, a group of renters who lives downtown testifies to the city's redistricting commission. Would this be considered a community of interest? Yes, no? Yes, this is thank you, Jean. This is a group of residents that can easily be mapped. It's in a distinct area, it's downtown, and they share a common policy interest, which can be addressed through legislation or public services. So renters tend to be in more urban areas, while homeowners are more towards the suburbs. Both groups would require different policy solutions to their living situations. So renters downtown would really care about rent control, and homeowners in the suburbs would care about flood insurance protection. So anybody that has a common policy concern and you can put it in one distinct area is a community of interest. All right, next up, we have a historically recognized town dating back to the late 1800s, but it now has a minimal population and it's within the lines of a county. Would this be considered a community of interest? It would be. Historical communities are recognized as a community of interest and should be considered when drawing maps. Again, they share a history, they share a culture, and they have similar policy concerns, and a historically recognized town is easy to mark geographically. So a group of almond and walnut farmers concentrated in the rural, unincorporated areas of the county, focused on ensuring they have enough water for their orchards. Would this community be considered a community of interest? I see some head nods. Yes, it's a group of people in a shared geographic location, and they all have similar needs for public services. Okay, a statewide group for people who are fans of the San Francisco Giants testifies to the local city redistricting commission. Would this be considered a community of interest? No, it will not. So it's important that a community of interest is distinct enough to draw on a map. This is a group that has people, they have Giants fans all over the state. It's not easy to map, and it's very unlikely that a governing agency has any say over the issues that this group cares about. Okay, so next we're going to talk about submitting your community of interest testimony. So communities of interest, we want to be able to bring more people to the table. So anybody can draw a map and submit testimony. And we have a few different tools that you can use that brings more people into the process, gets more in-depth input, and we'll go over those now. So first, input can be provided in public hearings like the one we're in today. And you can also get community of interest worksheets that are provided on the website and help with overall community engagement strategy. There are two types of expected maps that communities can, people in the community can use to testify. First is community of interest maps, which we just went over what community of interests are. You can submit your community of interest now through the end of the process. And we also have district plans that are based on 2020 data, which we are not doing until we actually get 2020 data, which will be released towards the end of September. So right now we're really focused on building these community of interest maps and hearing from community members and making sure that your voices are heard. And then the district plans will come later. Another way to draw a community of interest map is by using Districtor. Here is the Districtor link. We will also go through a presentation on how to use it. So you can go to districtor.org/event/Solano_county. You can also go to districtor.org/California, and then it can bring you to Solano County that way. It's an online tool that is really so user-friendly. You can create your community of interest right there. You name and describe it, and then you save it. And that will appear in Solano County's Districtor page, and it'll be official testimony. So it's really a really great tool. And next, our laminated paper maps will be available at in-person meetings. They are color-coded to easily distinguish between neighborhoods and streets. And then these will also be converted into GIS files, the same thing that Districtor is. So it will be official testimony. So with all of these different options, no matter how you decide to submit your community of interest, all of the work received is preserved by the county. So next up, we're just going to talk about our timeline for upcoming outreach meetings. So today is our 5th outreach meeting, and our next one is on July 31st. And our July 31st through August 28th meetings are in the morning from 9 to 11, and we hope to see you all there. And all of this information is on Solano County's redistricting website, which is redistricting.solanocounty.com. And thank you so much for being a part of this and for drawing your community's interests. Do we have any questions?
Hello.
Hi, Stephen.
Hi. Are there any, and thank you for the presentation. That was very educational, very, very much so. Are there any examples of the existing districts and communities of interest?
So communities of interest are actually, pretty new with 2021 redistricting. So a lot of the examples that we used could be communities of interest, but again, they're really subjective too. So I don't necessarily have a real life example for you, but really just kind of thinking through those 3 questions. If you can answer all of those 3 questions confidently, then that's a community of interest.
I understand what you're saying. I was just curious how my neighborhood was defined prior.
Oh, I understand.
Just
yeah.
to get a perspective.
I'm not totally sure where you could find that.
I can help. Hi, so this is Michelle Hepner. I am on our website, under resources, there is a tab that can be that you can access outside websites, and we did put up a link to the 2011 redistricting that was conducted at that point. So if you wanted to go back and look at the videos or the maps that were drawn, it's available for you through our website. So if you just go to the Solano County redistricting website, there's right at the top right-hand corner, there's a resources tab. If you click on that tab, it'll take you to a multitude of state law, federal law, and then it says websites. You click on websites, and there's a 2011 link to that 2011 redistricting.
Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. And please, for everyone on the call, please do look at the website. There's a lot of information on it. We put a lot of thought into the process and all the meetings and agendas and the past meetings and videos. They're all on the website for you to look at. Also, there's a tab called Get Involved. And on that tab, there's let me share my screen with you if I can. Can you give me back host, Kay?
Andrews, I have a question.
Then we go ahead.
What is the benefit of redrawing the district line?
So the reason for redrawing district lines is to ensure that every supervisor or elected official for that jurisdiction is equally represented by the population. So it's based on population numbers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I made a technical error. The Andrews, I accidentally just made you host. If you go to participants at the bottom, oh, here we go. Thank you.
Okay, let me see if I can share my screen. Okay. Can you see the website?
I don't see it yet.
Okay. So you don't see this yet?
You can see it now.
Yes.
It's there now.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so this is the Solano County redistricting website. And so this is the landing page, and at the top here is the main menus, so to speak. And what I wanted to show you was the Get Involved button over here. So if you click on Get Involved, first of all, you can subscribe to any news items that we put out. But more importantly, there's a community of interest form over here on this, so the bottom right icon. And if you click on that community of interest form, it's actually a helpful way for you to, the way the questions are asked, it's a helpful way for you to think through what could be a community of interest, or help you and you know, clarify what you think is your community of interest that you want to submit. And you can actually type straight into these boxes and submit it that way. That's the easiest way to get the information to us. You can also download it as a PDF and mail it to us. You can email it to us. There's a myriad of ways, but if you can get to the internet, I would suggest that you submit your input on this form over here. And then if you go back to the previous screen, there's another button that will show you communities of interest that have already been submitted for the county. And this is the middle bottom one here. And if you click on that, you'll be able to read other submissions that have been made so far. So you'll see them down here. Each one's in a little block, and it answers each question. So you can actually read what others have already submitted so far. I don't know if that's helpful to you, but as you think about communities of interest, or you would like to have your community considered as part of this, then I would suggest you read through this and then try and fill out the form and submit it that way. And then there's if you want to know more about redistricting, there's also resources here. The state law and the federal law will tell you how we got to the point of the requirements. So there's a Fair Maps Act here that will tell you how we got to this requirement to look at communities of interest as part of the redistricting process. So I'll hand this back to you, Kay.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michelle.
Hi, I have a question.
Hi, Teresa. What's your question?
Hey, can you help me better understand how a community of interest can become a gerrymander?
So the communities of interest don't necessarily become a gerrymander. The districts become gerrymanders, but with community of interest, so the way that they are built are really just a community input. So just, giving your input does not create a gerrymander necessarily. Kimmy, do you want to jump in?
Sure. So gerrymanders are created when it's almost the opposite of submitting a community of interest. So gerrymanders are created when districts are drawn with the intent of excluding people or including people, or making sure that certain people are benefited from those lines and things like that. So when you're talking about communities of interest, it's really sort of a smaller portion of a district than it is the entire district. And so we also strive to not gerrymander any lines as much as possible. And that's one of the reasons actually that community of interest testimony is so critical, so that we can address the needs of the community as a priority, as opposed to looking at other factors like incumbency or political parties or things like that.
Thank you, Kimmy. Does that answer your question, Teresa?
Yes, thank you.
And it looks like Rita has a hand up.
Yes, thank you very much. I have two questions. One, how much have the districts in the past changed based on redistricting, or have they stayed pretty consistent? And then secondly, how much weight is given to the communities of interest? I know it's something that needs to be done as far as outreach goes, but I'm just kind of wondering about that.
Yeah, Michelle, do you want to take this on with, so on the website, you can look back at what happened in 2011 and in the past to see what the districts look like and how they changed.
So Kay, why don't you answer the second question, and then I'll quickly look up the numbers of what we have now, and then see if I can get to it fast enough. If not, I can always send out this information.
That sounds fantastic. So how much weight is given to communities of interest? So in the beginning of the presentation, we went over kind of what are the different criteria, the different principles for redistricting. So all of these criteria are very important. So first they are all of relatively equal size. And then next, that they don't jump, that they are contiguous, so they're all connected. And then next up, we have that they maintain communities of interest. So all of these are really important. After communities of interest, we have following city, county, or local government lines, and then keeping the districts compact. So they all work together, but communities of interest are really at the top of the list with, keeping them equal size and also making sure that they, maintain that single line, that they're contiguous. Does that answer your second question, Rita?
It does. It does. So it's a combination of factors you're going to look at. You're going to look at, because my big concern is school districts. And I think that's a real community of interest. And it's currently, the district I'm concerned about is all in District 5. And I'd like to see it continue in that district. So.
Yes, absolutely. And so
Okay,
while Michelle is, yeah, any other questions while Michelle's looking up that information?
Mr. Andrews, how do we prevent gerrymandering?
So I think that, like Kimmy just said, I think a great way to help prevent gerrymandering is by submitting communities of interest and by, really being a part of the redistricting process. So making sure that, the community is a part of the process is a really, really important way to make sure that your district is fair and equal. Do you have any more questions?
1 second. Hi, can we get a copy of the presentation, or is that posted on the website?
I believe that the presentation will be posted on the website. Is that correct, Michelle?
Yes, so after each meeting, you guys normally email it to me, then I add it in as part of the minutes and the, but I haven't had the last two. So when you send them, maybe you can send me the last two as well. That would be great.
Absolutely, got it.
I'll update
Excellent.
it.
And I'm sorry, I'm kind of working while I'm listening to the presentation. Is there a way to sign up to participate more, have more participation than just going on to these web meetings?
Yes, so there is on our website there at the top, there's a button that says get involved, and you can subscribe. So anytime we put out news about what's going on with redistricting, you'll get an email letting you know that either meetings happening or, you know, when we get data down the line, as we draw maps, you'll be getting notices that maps are coming out. So you'll be able to keep track of it that way.
Excellent. That's what I need to know. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So I'll give another moment for questions, but I would be happy to move on to our districtor presentation.
Excuse me, this is Rosie Enriquez. Okay.
Yes, hi Rosie.
Hi, hon. I'm new at this whole technical thing. I'm an old retired person, so please bear with me. So the question I have for you is, I'm listening to this criteria, but isn't the redistricting based mostly on population? I mean, isn't that the whole idea of it? And I haven't heard anything mentioned about the population. That's why we're waiting for the census. How does that fit into the big picture?
Yes, Rosie, that's a great question. So we are waiting on census data right now, but while we're waiting on census data, you know, building these communities of interest and using these tools to testify for your community of interest, we can be doing that right now while we're waiting for census data. So going back to the traditional redistricting principles, keeping districts at relatively equal size is, you know, a number one part of the number one principle. So keeping them equal size, making sure that they're contiguous, that they don't hop or jump, and then maintaining communities of interest. All of those kind of mold together to create a district. So it absolutely is very important, and considering population and making sure that districts are equal size is very, very important.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Okay, and Michelle, if you would like to make me host again, I'd love to start our districtor presentation.
Sure.
Okay, so here we are at districtor.org/California. So we want to go to draw communities. So then you can see that you can do statewide, counties, cities, or school districts. We're going to click on counties for Solano County. You can find it here at the end, is Solano County. Go ahead and click on that. And it brings you to a map of your county. So we are going to zoom in. I am not from Solano County. Like I said earlier, I'm from New Hampshire. So I have no, I don't like any neighborhoods more than any other. So I'm going to pick Dixon at random. So we're going to go ahead and scroll on into Dixon. The way that you can zoom in is by using your mouse and scrolling in, or you can use in the upper left-hand corner the plus and minus to zoom in as well. And then you can pull it around and find your neighborhood. So once you are over your neighborhood, you are going to click on the paintbrush in the upper left-hand corner. And then you can start drawing your community. So say that my community is up here. It's going against the 113. And this is my community. But I made a mistake because I didn't want it to go over the 113. So I am going to use the eraser that's right next to the paintbrush. And I'm going to erase that. And there's this really small area right here. I can change the size of it. So I'm going to make it really small to get this one little spot. You can also use this on the paintbrush. So if you want to make, it bigger, you can do that, or smaller. And then once you are happy with your community, you can name that community. I will name it. And then I'm going to describe it. So a great way to describe it is by using those 3 questions. What are the shared characteristics? I can spell characteristics. What's the shared bond, shared history? The geographic markers, you can use them on the map, but it's also helpful to say what the geographic markers are, and then also how policy issues, how they can affect your community. So describing those is a great description for your community of interest. So say you want to draw another community of interest up here where you see this blue dot, you can click the plus sign, add another color, and you can start drawing another community of interest. And then you can name that one and describe that as well. So you don't only have one chance to do your community of interest, you can make more than one. And there are also different things that you can see. You can see the population, you can see the demographics, hover over and see all of those. These are not necessary for drawing communities of interest. Really, they're more helpful for when you're actually drawing district lines. You don't have to be considering these numbers when drawing communities of interest, but if it's helpful for you, then that's great as well. But it's really just here and not necessary for you to consider when drawing these. We also have down here important places. So if you click on the blue new button, you can go ahead on the map and find an important place to you. So say this right here is the park that I go to. It's a very important place to me. Can name the park and then describe why this is an important place. This could be a park that needs more lights. It gets really dark at night, or where you take your kid and you'd like there to be water fountains there. So there's also an option to choose an important place to you in your community. So then once you're done with all of that and you feel good about your community of interest, you've described it and named it, you are going to save it. So you click save, and then as you can see here, the URL has changed. So this is now your community of interest that you can copy and find online. So this brings you right back to your county. And you can see right here is your community of interest, and it's saved for you, and all of the information is saved as well. So also in saving, you're going to tag, and you are going to tag it with Solano_county. And then that automatically gives it to Solano County to, and its official testimony. And then you could name it. I will just name mine. Mount Pleasure, my name. And then you're all set. And that is Districtor. It is very user-friendly, and it's very easy to use. Do we have any questions about Districtor?
Just to clarify, this is where we need to go to draw our community of interest map. Is that correct?
Yes, it's one of many options. You can also testify by emailing the county. You can give your community of interest online on the forms on the website. I believe you can also call in and give your testimony over the phone. So there are a lot of different ways to do it, but this is one where you can really have control over the map and build it yourself, and it's really easy to use as well. So yeah, there are a lot of different options for how you can submit.
So just wanted to go back to Rita's question about how the population has changed. So I will share my screen. So I'm going to reclaim the host, and I'll share my screen with you. So we did put a map together that showed the population changes from 2010. But I do want to remind you that the data you're seeing now, the ACS data, is not census data. So this is data that was put together from 2019. So it's not the census data yet. So we haven't received that yet. Let me know if you can see that.
We can see it.
Okay, great. So you can see the population in 2010, and then the population at between 2015 2019 is now 441,000. And you can see the percentage in population changes on the side. So District 5 is actually grown by 12.28% in the last 10 years. I hope that's helpful, Rita.
It is. The question I have then is, how close in population do you anticipate making each one of the districts? I mean, obviously you can't make them even. What's the error or the difference that's allowable, or is there anything like that?
Yeah, there's I think it's called a standard deviation, and I think it's 5%. But if Paul Mitchell's still on the line, yeah, he can correct me. No, okay. Do you know the percentage, Kay?
I'm not totally sure, but we can get back to you on that.
Yeah, I believe it's 5%. You have to be within a 5% deviation. So I believe we are, we may be close to that, even though the population has changed that much. It's also changed in different areas. So, but we won't know anything for certain until the actual census data is released.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What's the estimated time you think that redistricting will be done?
So we have a project timeline. The requirement is that the project or the final maps must be approved 174 days before the next election. As it stands right now, that makes our deadline December 15th. And so we have created a timeline to meet that deadline. And it's actually on our website as well. There's a timeline that shows, if you look on the front page, there's a quick links at the bottom, there's a timeline there, and you'll be able to see how we've planned out this process. The problem we've had is that the census data was supposed to be released in March, and it's been delayed until September. And that's the reason why we're doing the outreach on the communities of interest now, because these are things we can do without census data. But as soon as we get the census data, well, as soon as the census data is released, we will wait 21 days, and then we will be able to start looking at drawing maps, and we will be taking the input that we receive through these community of interest as we draw those lines.
I see. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Is everyone done looking at this map? I was going to stop sharing for now.
Yes, thank you.
Are there any more questions? So if not, I think we can close this meeting. So thank you very much for your time. And if you do have questions, feel free to email me through the website. There's a redistricting@solanocounty.com option to email. That email comes straight to me, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Well, thank you for all your hard work on this. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent.
Good
Very
night.
informative. Very informative.
Good night.